Well, howdy there. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Danielle, and today I reckon we ought to talk about black cowboys and how they built the Wild West. So, the word cowboy actually comes from a Spanish word, vaquero, which means person who manages cattle while on horseback. It later became buckaroo after Anglo translation, and the word was first used in the year 1725, referring to a boy who was tending the cows. The cowboy lifestyle began in Texas when it was still a part of the Mexican territory. It was once considered cattle country because of the millions and millions of cattle that grazed the land. Cattle farming became more popular in the 1800s when white settlers began looking for land and moving to Texas. Although the Mexican government opposed slavery, the white settlers brought their slaves and actually were able to establish cattle ranches as well as cotton farms. By the year 1825, 25% of the Texas population were enslaved people. 15 years after Texas joined the Union and became a state, there was recorded over 182,000 enslaved people living in Texas. We know the Civil War came, and in 1861, Texas joined the Confederacy. With the white ranchers fighting in the war, they depended on their slaves to keep the land up and tend to their cattle. This helped them learn the skills of cattle tending, like breaking horses or pulling calves out of the mud. But containing the cattle was a huge obstacle. This is before barbed wire was invented, and eventually the cattle population grew and got out of control. When the white ranchers returned after the war, of course they came and they saw that their herds had gotten out of control, and they tried to round up the herds, but obviously, especially after Juneteenth, they had no more free labor. They were pretty much desperate for help, so they began hiring freed, skilled black cowhands to help them on the ranch. Of course, we know after the Civil War, black people still didn't have the greatest of life in the South. They were still denied land ownership and really didn't have most of the rights other people had. Between 1879 and 1884, freed black men and women began migrating to western states like Kansas. Many of them had been trained by Mexican vaqueros, Native American cattle handlers, or even their former masters. They started working as ranch hands, making wages that were actually equal to their white counterparts. Skilled cattle handlers became even more in high demand when ranchers started selling their livestock to northern states where beef was actually 10 times more valuable than it was in the South. There weren't many railroads around at the time, so enormous herds had to be physically moved to shipping points in places like Kansas and Colorado and even Missouri. Cowboys would round up herds of cattle on horseback, and they rode through extreme weather conditions as well as attacks from Native Americans that were defending their land. It's estimated that 1 in every 3 cowboys was melanated. Black cowboys had the job of breaking unruly horses that nobody could ride. They oftentimes also worked as chuck wagon cooks, and they had the task of helping cattle stay calm by singing songs. Despite how skilled they were or how much ability they had, they rarely had higher ranking than that. A lot of the times they were denied opportunities because the white people weren't willing to respect the authority of a black trail leader. For the most part, they had a certain level of equality within their crews. However, they faced a lot of discrimination when they would pass through certain towns, and even people in their own crews would put on a racist act in front of white women. A lot of the times they were barred from eating at certain restaurants or staying at certain hotels that were deemed white only.
Whoa, 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 whoa! What the hell you think you're doing, boy? Get that out of here!
Even saloons were typically segregated, which required black cowboys to either get their food from the back door or have to buy and prepare their food on the trail. Black men were outright banned from all brothels, but they did have permission to frequent the gambling halls. By the turn of the century, railroads had become more prominent in the West, barbed wire had been invented, and Native American people had been forced to live in reservations. This meant that there was less of a need for cowhands on ranches, and this left a lot of cowboys, especially black cowboys, who couldn't even buy land with nothing. Although opportunities for cowboys to get work on ranches started to decline, people actually started becoming more and more interested in the cowboy lifestyle. This is where you get the Wild West shows and rodeos. By the year 1873, an American soldier by the name of Buffalo Bill Cody began a traveling production where he would showcase certain skills like rodeo roping, Native American dances, and even saddle riding. Racism was extremely common in rodeo competitions. Black riders would be compared to animals or even given nicknames referencing African animals. In response to their treatment and good old Jim Crow, black cowboys actually started forming their own soul circuits that would later become the Southwestern Colored Cowboys Association. There are so many untold black and brown Wild West stories, and some of them we may actually already know. Hollywood completely ignored the existence of black cowboys while simultaneously using their real life stories for some of their films. For instance, The Lone Ranger is supposedly inspired by the first black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi named Bass Reeves. He was born into slavery in Arkansas and actually got his freedom during the Civil War. He was first recruited as a deputy due to his familiarity with Indian territory and his ability to be able to speak multiple native languages. He became one of the most valued deputies in Indian territory, and during his 32-year career, he actually arrested over 3,000 criminals. About Nat Love, who was a former slave who became a self-trained expert marksman and hero to the Wild West. He grew up in Tennessee where he learned how to read, and he discovered that he actually had a real gift with horses. So he later moved to Dodge City where he began doing cowboy work on cattle ranches. He became a crack shot out on the trail, and his story actually speaks to the kinship that existed between freedmen and Native Americans. The story goes that in 1877 he was actually captured by the Pima tribe while he was rounding up cattle. After they shot him 14 times and he survived, they decided to spare his life out of solidarity because many of their tribal members were of mixed ancestry. They even offered for him to become part of the tribe, but according to Love himself, he hopped on a pony and hightailed it to Texas. Can't talk about the Wild West without mentioning two black pioneers of the rodeo scene, and that is Jesse Stahl and Bill Pickett. Stahl was born in 1879 in Tennessee and was a bold bronco rider. It's even said that he rode his horse backwards once in an act of defiance when judges awarded him second place in a competition. Pickett was of Cherokee ancestry, and he began his career as a child growing up on a ranch. He invented the technique of bulldogging, also known as steer wrestling, which is basically grabbing an animal by the horns trying to catch it. He performed on a global scale and traveled with the Millers Brothers 101 Wild Ranch show. He appeared in some early motion pictures, and he was the first black cowboy honored by the National Rodeo Hall of Fame. Now, don't get it twisted. Women work the ranch and develop skills just like the men did. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there were plenty black cowgirls as well, especially Johana July, who was said to be a force to be reckoned with. She was a black Seminole Native woman born in Mexico in 1850. She loved to ride bareback with only one rope as a bridle, and she was a famous horse breaker, and she found work breaking wild horses for soldiers and also being a translator at the border. Henrietta, Aunt Rittie Williams Foster, who was born into slavery in Mississippi and served on a ranch cooking and cleaning and picking cotton in Texas. She was known for being able to ride a horse better than any man would, and it said that a lot of the men feared her and they didn't mess with her because she kept a butcher knife on her and she would cut your throat if you tried her. They say she would ride her horse in long skirts, could handle the cattle, and even throw calves. She was also skilled in riding side saddle and bareback too. Today, there are tons of black cowboy and black cowgirl organizations all across the country, and some of them include the Ebony Horsewomen Incorporated, the Reggae Cowboys, the Compton Junior Posse, and even Horses in the Hood. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you can know when I upload a new video, and I will see you guys the next time. Peace.